Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Just before I start this video, I just want to kind of say that, just recently I've been kind of experimenting with some different video formats. So, instead of just doing like the normal marketing vlogs, which, because I work in that area, I know quite a bit about it, and I know some people might find it interesting, but surprisingly, those videos don't get the most views. If I look back through my channel, the videos that have gotten the most views, it's the ones which, where I've kind of addressed a topic which resonates with like millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people, or at least, So I'm kind of, trying to, whilst the channel is about marketing vlogs and travel and stuff, I'm still experimenting with different niches and, just trying to kind of find out what works best. So just bear with me, because it's not that I'm flip-flopping, but when I look through the videos that have done really, really well, only one of them's a travel video, and the other two are like topical discussion videos, a bit like this one I'm going to do now. So okay, right, so that's that over and done with. I'm going to make a video about the difficulties of getting a job in the UK in the year 2025. As everyone will know, everything's a mess. You've probably all heard it in the news, but there's different reasons for that, and we're going to get into that. Okay, so just bear with me, and we'll crack on. Okay, so everybody knows that there's kind of no real growth in the UK economy at the moment. There's a multitude of different reasons, some of which I got into a bit more on the last video that I did, which is, titled "Is the UK a Sinking Ship?" Okay, so in this video I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on, job seekers, people putting in for jobs, people putting in for contracts, and some of the things that are going wrong. Now, because the university system has changed over the last, let's say, definitely over the last 10 to 15 years, if not more. It's a business now, so everyone can get a degree. It's a human right, and because everyone has a degree, whatever subject it is, they're less valuable. So when you apply to an employer and you say you got a degree, that means like gobbledygook. It doesn't count for what it did 20, 30, 35 years ago. So that's one of the issues. Obviously, because there's an oversupply of people looking for work, looking for contracts and all the rest of it, they're now, putting job ads or contracts out. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. So they'll put something out that says like, 28k to 38k, just to get people in. So people will hone in on the latter end of that, like 38k, and they'll think, right, 38k, nearly 40k, okay, that's doable. So they'll put in for it, and then they'll get an interview, and then, the company, whichever one it is, will then say, okay, well, the starting salary is actually 28k, which is not very good, because the minimum wage as of April this year in 2025 in the UK is, believe it or not, 22 grand working on a full-time hours basis, £12.21 times 40 hours a week, times 52, it's 22 grand. So, if you're working for, 24k, 26k, especially if you've got bills, a lot of bills, like rent payments, car payments, credit cards, all the rest of it, it's absolutely nothing. It's not going to get you anywhere. So everybody needs, well, I say everybody, especially, from my sector, marketing, people need to be earning 40k upwards. Okay, 38 is doable, 39 is doable, 37.5 is not an exact deal breaker, but once you start getting down to like 30, it's nowhere near enough. So that's one of the things. Employers know that things are in their favour, and they're kind of twisting things and putting out such a broad salary range when we know full well that the starting salary is the lower end of that salary range they've put out there. So that's one of the things that's going on. Another thing that happens a lot is, employers got a legal right to, advertise these positions, even if they're going to fill it internally, which often happens, or even if they know who's going to fill the job, they've still got to put it out there. So very often than not, they're just going through the motions and putting the jobs out there. And a lot of these jobs are, they have like ATR, applicant tracking systems, which scan your CVs using AI, and they pick out certain keywords. So you could put a lot of effort into writing like a cover letter and sending off your CV, and it's just been scanned by a machine. A piece of software, basically applicant tracking software, and it will pick out who to interview based on certain keyword metrics that the job or the company has set. So that can be against you. That's a big thing a lot of people aren't really aware of. They put all this time into getting a job and they're unaware of the applicant tracking systems. So that's another thing which kind of holds people back. Another thing which is a bit of an issue is there's always this tug of war between sort of working remotely and hybrid working and working in the office. Since the pandemic, a lot of employers are now moving to a bit more of a hybrid model, which is fine by me, or working in the office. But most people want to work remotely, especially depends on the job type. If they work in a sector like I do, where a lot of the jobs are remote, then the dream is to be fully remote. So you can base yourself in Gibraltar or Malaga or wherever you want to be. But when you're putting through these contracts and these jobs, there's always this tug of war because the employers, a bit of deceit goes on here as well. They advertise it as like fully remote, and then you find out it's a hybrid. Or they'll advertise it as a hybrid, and then they'll kind of flip the coin over at the interview stage and say, well, it's actually 4 days in the office, 1 day working from home, which is absolutely useless. If it's like kind of, twice, maybe once every fortnight, just popping into the office for a couple of days, that's not so bad. Obviously, fully remote's the best, especially, a lot of companies now are saying fully remote within the UK, or fully remote within London, or fully remote within Bristol, for example. So there are some companies which do like 100% fully remote. I think there's a website called the Remote Work Foundation. It lists like all the companies that are signed up to fully remote work. Not all, but a lot of them have actually signed up to the accredited scheme. It's worth looking at that. So there's always this tug of war at interview stage, and between the candidates applying for these contracts, stroke jobs, and the employers who are trying to onboard people under the pretense of remote working. I appreciate it doesn't work with every job. If you're working in a steel factory or you're a bus driver or something, it's obvious it's not going to work. But in some sectors, depending on what you do, it is more viable. Slight cough there. That's that is another blocker, another thing that kind of holds people back. So okay, let's move on. Yeah, another thing that's happening is like employers or companies, if it's like a contract, they're asking for like sort of 4 or 5 years experience for like an entry level job. So they're expecting somebody who's got like a lot of experience in a particular sector to go and work for a minimum wage like 12 quid an hour, which is absolutely ridiculous. Everything's pitted against you. It's the worst job market I've seen. For probably a decade, to be honest. I don't think we've recovered from the 2008 financial crash. Everything in government is a mess. They're talking about getting rid of 15%. Is it 15% or 15,000? Something like that. Civil servants. I think it's 15%. They want to cut $2.5 billion from the bill of the civil service, which is only fair because why should the axe only fall on like as in public services, front-facing public services like the NHS and stuff like that. So it's only fair that the civil service take a hit as well. But everything's a mess, and you can see that just from watching programs like Laura Kuenssberg, and on Sunday morning, a lot of the ministers are scratching their head. They don't know what to do. They don't know what the right strategies are, and if they do, maybe they're not in power, so they can't put them into place. And there's all these kind of geopolitical things going on with Russia, China, America, putting tariffs on, but obviously I got into that in my last video, but there are many, many reasons why it's difficult for you to get a job if you're looking for a job, and many people are. There's more people in kind of part-time work, 0-hour contracts. I know the government are trying to rule out 0-hour contracts, but, it is a farce. I was looking on, I do the contract work, I was looking on some different jobs websites, which I will put in the description for you guys at the end. You can have a look. In this country, in the UK, everyone looks on Indeed, but there's loads more. And I was looking on a website called Simply Hired, which I think is an affiliate company to Indeed. It's kind of linked. I was looking at the American job market for similar kind of contracts. The salaries are way higher. Looking at like $40, $45 an hour. Full time, fully remote. And as soon as you start looking at the UK job market, it's like 12 quid an hour, £13 an hour, or trying to get somebody to work, in a skilled marketing role for like £15 an hour. Woohoo! So it is ridiculous here in the UK. And depending on what sector you work in, there are different challenges. And Also the population is getting older, in the UK. So a lot of the younger people have been doing degrees in media studies and gaming and stuff. Maybe they haven't got the skills or the motivation, or maybe they haven't got the passion and the interest. Because every generation is different. But look, there's many reasons why you might be struggling to find a job, and it's not all your fault. The country's a mess. It really is. So there's a few more reasons, and we'll kind of get into those in a second. So let's move on. Okay, so another thing that happens, which shouldn't really happen in my opinion, is these what I call one-way AI interviews. So the employers will send you a link, and you click on the link, and it's like a video link, so some set questions. You sort of click next, and some questions will appear, and then in text format on the screen it'll ask you some questions. You have to record your answers through your webcam. Now I'm not looking into my webcam at the moment, I'm looking into my video camera, but you have to look into your webcam on your computer and sort of try and be all nice and professional as if you're actually at an interview and stuff. And there's no interviewer even there. So whatever you say has just been recorded. It's like a one-way interview. So you can't really engage or make yourself shine. Maybe you can present well. Some people are better than others than that. I've certainly had a lot more practice in the last year and a half doing YouTube. Talking to a camera, and it's quite different talking to a camera as it is to somebody in the high street or somebody down the pub. It's very different. If you've never done it before, or if you're not very used to it, or if you only do the odd occasional video call, you might need more practice. There's lots of different strategies to keep your face still, look into the sensor, just stay focused and be calm, be natural. But it doesn't come automatically. I remember the first time I ever did a video call, this was well over 10, 12, 15 years ago, something more than that. I was all over the place. So look, let's go back to a video. So this video I'm talking about. So, as I said, there's this strew of stuff from employers now where they'll ask you to complete record a mini video, 3 minutes long. And more often than not, depending on the job type, they will ask you for a strategy. So that happens in marketing. I don't like it personally. It feels like you've asked. It feels like they're trying to pick your brains and stuff like that. They've got no intention of giving you the job. And just think the amount of people that are applying for jobs and contracts nowadays. I mean, maybe 1,000 people per job, maybe more. Think how much valuable tips and advice. Some people won't do it. In fact, I don't do it anymore. But when I say I don't do it, I'm not saying I won't respond to reasonable requests, but I won't write a company like a marketing strategy as part of a job application. I just won't do that. But you just got to be shrewd and not overshare. There's, like I said, there's many reasons why you might be struggling to get a job. Everything's against you at the moment, not just the economy, but employers know things are bad and everything's in their favour. And I think a lot of them are just milking it, to be honest, and trying to get free information, free tips, free advice, free strategies, free little exercises they set. And a lot of them are very cowardly. But like I said, they'll send you a link where you have to, fill out a form, record a little video on your webcam via a link like Loom or something, and then they don't even have the courtesy to let you know that you haven't got the contract, and they'll just get it Indeed, click on My Jobs, and then click not selected by employer, which is a bit cheap, isn't it? You'd think if you had the decency to kind of spend a bit of time filling out the application and doing one of their tasks, that they would kind of send you a personalised email or reach out to you and say, I'm sorry, you haven't got a job, in a bit of a nicer way, rather than just going to a back office thing and clicking not selected by employer. So things are tough, and it's everywhere across the UK. Like I said, I've started putting in for contracts in America now, because the rates are much higher, like $45 an hour. So do the maths, that's at least 30 quid an hour, which is damn good for the UK. I think it is anyway. So you just got to be creative and think a little bit outside the box rather than just doing what everyone else is doing, which is applying for jobs on Indeed and, you know, getting caught in the same trap, you know, doing these AI interviews and one-way questions and doing little tasks, which is basically giving them free advice and stuff. So guys, I'll wrap up there. Thank you for listening. I don't want to talk for too long. I think you got the general idea. Yeah, until next time, I'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much.